Goedenavond. Fijn dat jullie er allemaal zijn. Thank you for being here. The session will be in English. I am Menno. I'm organizing this event every month. And this month is especially special because we have 3 amazing speakers today. I think it's best if you introduce yourself. So let's start with you. Thank you.
Okay, hi, hello. Is the microphone working? Or
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. My name is Ekim Tan. I'm trained as an architect. I work for Play the City now, I think for more than 10 years. So we are a group of urban planners, architects, game designers, and some tech support when needed. And I think over the 10 years we made maybe more than 40 games for over cities, mostly in Europe, but also outside Europe. I think I will explain more, but this is what it is for now.
Thank you.
My name is Floris Boogaard. I'm a professor from Groningen, lector as we say in the Netherlands, so applied science, Hans Hogeschool. I'm also a consultant at Deltaris, working on climate adaptation in the international context. And also, third job, yes, crazy, I know, the Global Center of Adaptation, which is solution brokering. So about heat stress and flooding and drought, we travel the world basically to help people to get in touch with other people that have the same problem. So that's me.
Hi, I'm Ben Schouten. I'm English. I'm a full professor in Eindhoven University of Technology and Playful Interaction. So we look at why people play and how people play, and especially in the new role that we see now, where communities want to change or want to do something about climate adaptation or water management. And I'm also a lector at HVA and Play Civic Media. I just wrote a book and and I'm going to put it here. I've never done this before, so
I think everybody should read it. Thank you, Ben.
Which is about civic empowerment and how people are fed up with centralized solutions and want to bring things from a bottom-up perspective. I'm writing a second book with Menno on how play can contribute.
So this was the commercial part of the. Thank you. But I think it's a good bridge to what we're here about, right? Because I invited you 3 to join us tonight in this lovely bar in Utrecht to talk about climate adaptation and citizen empowerment through play. And I think that's quite innovative. But also, I think it's quite innovative. You've already been doing this for like 10 years, as you said, right? Mm-hmm. If I ask you, what is your project that you're most proud of, that you would really would love to share in the next 20 minutes? No, you don't get 20 minutes, right? Yeah. It's just keep it short.
Yeah, I think that, I have to admit that I come from a design background, and when we also the world of game, we really entered much later. So we were really, as designers, looking at the question of how do we invent methods where we can bring ideas or knowledge from different perspectives together. So like in the last century, you could see one architect like Le Corbusier. There's one character who made like cities, thousands of, he made one plan on his own as an architect. And if you think how cities are designed today, it's impossible. So you have hundreds of different consultants, experts looking together, and even that is the participation by itself, right? Like, let alone the participation of citizens. And now they are becoming, in the meantime, citizens are getting much more access to knowledge. Sometimes the people who are governing them or planning for them are as smart as the citizens. Sometimes citizens are smarter. So I have been in participation meetings where citizens in Amsterdam ask, like, what is the model you're using? What are the components, like variables of your model? Is it really true? They can really ask these questions in participation meetings in Amsterdam. So you really see, the tools we had in the last century, and we are trying to plan the cities with them, are just totally not capable of doing the job. So that's where it came from. And then I think citizen empowerment actually came to our job a little bit later on, because that question was there. We as designers were looking at methods, how can you bring knowledge from different backgrounds of disciplines, but I think also the citizens are local experts. So as an expert, if you come from water perspective or from different backgrounds, you have your own knowledge, but you have very limited knowledge of what the local situation is. So you really can take serious local residents as experts and also give, I think, like voice to their knowledge and to make more precise plans. So that's.
So getting everybody involved and also adapting to a new climate, but also collaborating to come up with solutions. I think you just came back from New Orleans.
Yeah.
You've seen a big catastrophe, and you've also seen that people put in a lot of effort to change things, right?
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, exactly. We went to New Orleans, and probably 2005 Katrina, almost 2,000 people died. Very unfortunate, of course. Same situation we had in 1953. Devastating. Dikes would break. People had to rebuild. And what is very inspiring, I think, is that they need to rebuild in another way, which is not common in the world actually. So we travel around basically to see and to evaluate what they changed. And now there are a lot of housing districts on poles. So when the water would break, the houses would still be dry. They're made hills where they can fly to, flee to. So that's very inspiring. So a lot of things, and also green infrastructure, which is the main thing in the Netherlands and all around the world. So making bioswales, bodies in Nederland, rain gardens, permeable pavement, these kind of things. And they implemented that after Katrina, so they're 15 years old, 10 years old. So we tested them as well by doing a little flooding. Not to scare people away, of course, little flooding, confined floodings, and to test them if they still work. And that was quite successful with organizations. As you say, it's very important to involve citizens, but also the municipality. They have a water authority there. Also the army is involved with the dike, so they came to see how it actually works. And sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. And you can learn a lot about that as well, of course.
Yeah,
so
there's a lot of people involved there, and you as a designer, you know how to get things together. You've got so much knowledge on getting people together and listen to each other and build on each other's knowledge. You know all these big sort of meta questions. Where does play come in, Ben? I was making a bridge to you.
Very smooth. Well, I got it. But the answer is I like to dream and I don't believe in reality. So so it's about imaginary futures, actually, something that isn't there but you want to achieve. And if you want me to give an example, then I think one of the best examples is, because there are some more people who worked on that game, is which is just demonstrated in Eindhoven, and children with cerebral palsy. They have a lot of problems with training, and they do need to do this every day and wear complaints, and we need to make it easier, but also that you can fail, that you feel motivated, etc., etc. So in this case, for instance, we took this telephone here, which is neutral. There's nothing. It doesn't have any identity or affordance. We gave the sleeve of a magic monster, and what you do is to do tricks with coins, and so you are a magician, and from there on you have to move your hands so that the play is completely natural to the things that you have to do. And that's where I think play is important to motivate, to let people participate, and that fits exactly with what I'm used to. I'm raised as an artist, so I'm more interested in play around than in always goal-oriented, and but where the optimum is to me very interesting.
Yeah, so you think there are a couple of qualities in play, for example, collaboration, future, and also making mistakes. Well, when we talk about flooding, that's absolutely not the case. Like you apparently can flood a city and then say, oh, it works. I wouldn't.
Let's test it.
Let's try it in Utrecht. But the thing is, like, if you like the play brings together people. Play helps you imagine future prospects.
In a safe environment also.
And in a safe environment. How do you use that in your work?
I think when we discovered it, I was explaining to you in Almere for the first time, when we were testing actually Christopher Alexander's, he's an architect as well, improvised way of making plans. So like we were trying to see how you simulate, like improvise the more organic growing cities. So what we started observing with the postdoc students were they were also bringing role play and storytelling into, while they were like making this method of like, okay, we are building together a plan. and nobody has one master idea that dominates, so we are together improvising and making a plan. And then you see, based on the interviews they made with the citizens, they would really reenact them in the game, like making stories about their lives, so that when they were building the city together, they could then also make. Actually, I think they were choosing values, like what are the values we believe in together as a group. Which ones do we, skip or isolate, and which ones do we want to take on when we are making the plan?
Right.
So, I think when we were observing, they make, they take on these roles. Like one of them wants to really live in a quiet, isolated place, and the other one is much more urban and wants interaction, wants to go out, and then based on that, you actually build your arguments of what sort of city you want and where do you want to go. We were like, okay, maybe that's really interesting to really look at the world of games.
Right.
I think everybody knows here Jane McGonigal. So at that time, she was really, hot with her games.
She was a big picture.
Yeah, exactly. So we were really learning from her games, like World Without Oil, etc. So and then I think the interaction part, the role-playing part, that also fits into urban planning so much.
Right.
So you have these different roles, you have different positions that people take,
Also
and then based on that,
responsibilities,
and you cannot assume any position beforehand. You can have a politician, he can act 100 different ways, so you cannot model these characters. They really have to be there, I think. And then sometimes you have like really quiet Amtenar, and then you think, well, he has no influence. Sometimes they can be super influential, much more influential than a politician. So you really start understanding what these roles are, based on these different characters. And then and that does not exist in architectural education. When I was studying architecture, nobody talked about this to me. Like
nobody talks about the stakeholder politics.
You are treated like all of us will become a Le Corbusier or something. Like I will, as soon as I can design well, everybody will accept. You are kind of in this illusionary world that you kind of design the best things, and then you come out of the education. You're like, okay, the world doesn't work that way. There are so many different influences, and still the way we are making plans are so. I think if you use play or like this kind of interactive, models to make plans, we can really spare much more time and energy and money. I really believe that. So what today happens is that when an architect makes a plan, and the politician reacts, citizens react, and it has to be like, revised maybe 2 years of time, while an architect can make that plan in maybe a week time, based on the knowledge that he or she has, because all these people come on later and later and later, and then a crisis comes and new inputs come in, and then you're like 10 years later in an urban plan.
So you'd like to involve the citizens way earlier,
yeah.
and get everybody's input way earlier, and you think play, actually you've shown that play helps that. What I find is interesting is that we just had, like a couple of months ago, we had a session on applied games, and I have a background in arts and design myself, and I thought, oh yeah, I can be this amazing artist, right? I can change the world with just one good game design. It's exactly what you said there, right? That's architecture.
Yeah. Exactly.
And then you start working, and you find out you have just to work with people.
Yes. You're just one of the players,
right? Yeah, it's one of the players. You're not something special. You're just bringing people together. So,
I think more than that. I think you, as a spatial designer, you also have skill sets which others don't have, and I think that's also the fear of a lot of architects. When we, for example, try to introduce play-like methods into processes, most of the times you see the resistance from the experts, because they feel, well, somebody is attacking my, and it's not really about that. Everybody has its own skill set, and architects and designers, they have their own skill sets, which are very valuable. The only thing is that it has to be combined with other values, other knowledge sets, and there, I think that's more than bringing people together, of course, and translating into space. What are the different? Yeah.
We'll go to the Q&A in 10 minutes.
All right.
Is that right? Because then it's sort of organized. I like a little bit of organization here. So all right.
Mr. Square.
Yeah, that's me. I was wondering, like, you went to a couple of cities. Like you went to the second youngest city in the world.
Yeah.
How do you feel they take everybody along? Like how do they connect to their citizens?
Yeah.
And how does that work or doesn't?
Yeah, exactly. The second youngest country, Timor-Leste. You said city.
Sorry.
Dili in this case. Indeed, well, they have a multi-risk profile, so they have everything. It's not only floodings, it's not only drought and heat stress, but they also have the earthquakes, tsunamis, landslides. So it's devastating. They cannot develop. They don't have money, so there's not a lot going on. They really have to green the city as well. Urban planning is a big issue there because they basically follow the money now, as we've done in a lot of cities as well. So you have to teach them. And one thing that it's not really a game, but it's something that we use. It's climate scan. It means that citizen can go with their app, and if they find something which is related to climate scan in what way whatsoever, they can put it on a map. And that's now a community of more than 1,500 people actively using, and they put everything on the map. And that's basically, you can see all around the world, so also New Orleans, what I did last week, or in Dili, where you can see green infrastructure, you can see floating solar panels, so everything with mitigation and adaptation, which is quite learningful. And we had a new idea as well, as using gaming as well, because the government doesn't work with residents, not at all. And one of the things that I did with gaming, not a developer or anything, was in 2011, was Watertown. Funny story, because you have to have a fun game. Well, funny story. In 2011, we had a big flooding in the Netherlands, in Egmond aan Zee. There was 1 meter of water in a shopping street, and the shop owners were furious. And then the mayor, wethouder from the municipality, he actually went to that street when it was resolved, and he said, yeah, this is once every 100 years, it will never happen again, so it's fine. And in the same month, we got another once in 100 years, 60 millimeters an hour in that shopping street, again 1 meter, so they were furious. So one of the shop owners slapped him in the face, and he got a blood nose. Really. And I was discussing this event in an international context of an Interreg project, and the Scottish partner said, that's a game. We're going to make a game. And the game is basically that you are in the role of the municipality. You have a limited budget, limited space, and your game is to not get a bloody nose from residents. So I thought it was quite fun, and that inspired a lot of residents of Egmond, but also the municipality, of course. They didn't like the game that much, but they stirred up things, and a lot of things happened after that. So that's my experience of a game that actually worked.
Yeah, if I listen to this, like the gamers are used to either collect data or to understand the position that the municipality is in.
Exactly.
But I think Ben has an idea how games can do more than just mere propaganda or putting your hands to work.
Well, if you want me to react on, we should be careful that play becomes not the new hamster wheel of society, where we just force everybody to run into the same direction. And so there has to be a sort of an open-ended quality to that, or less rule-based governed system. And I think data drives us into efficiency, but actually this thing drives us into efficiency. Everything is how fast can it go from A to B, is there a doctor in the room? And so the play in this thing also does the same thing. We have to comply or set ourselves a goal. So I think play is basically about meaning. So it's not about efficiency, but it's about inefficiency. It's about creating values, for instance, in community, that you can work together or that you can have the same dream, etc., etc. And we should be very careful in taking the next step. And I like to talk about playification, for instance, instead of gamification, which has this more open-ended quality where we have an open dialogue instead of following the procedures to a game. It's a minor thing, but I think it's important to make this remark because I think we should be careful about the freedom that we have in playing games.
It sounds like a really important remark because what you were telling is that you have to work with people, right? Mm-hmm. And all these people need to talk to each other. There needs to be a dialogue, and the end result is not really fixed. You have to find it together. Mm-hmm. So, what kind of playful things do you do during these sessions to get people talking and to get this dialogue running?
Yeah, I think the open-endedness, what Ben is saying, is we started actually. The first few games we built were really more or less parametric, rule-based, really architectural games where people had to really, get the number of pieces that they have been given to, and then follow the design rules that we designed for them. And then I think we quickly learned that it's much better if you open up, instead of just like what we were basically doing was more closed games based on algorithms that people don't know, but then in an analog way. I think more and more it has become really much more less rule. Like there are rules, like for example, it's turn-based, that you kind of build up arguments based on listening to each other, and then you interact based on that, etc. There are a few simple rules that organizes the play, but it's actually the role play but also the roles not being modeled, as I said, like you cannot estimate the role of a politician or a civil servant beforehand. They are themselves. They play themselves.
So
and
you can't play the game not to get a bloody nose, basically. That's.
Yeah.
That's an interesting thing. Sorry, can we?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Now we're talking about the magic circle. Play is not real. Play is something different. So you can maybe try to project what's happening in real, but it's never for real. And I think that's a quality we should also keep like that. Because if it comes to reality, then it's just possibilities. It's just calculations. So I really appreciate the magic circle. So the untakeable boundary between what's in the play environment and what's outside the world. One of the qualities that we should keep. So I'm wondering how you do this, because your inside world is really, your outside world really comes in. Actually, you take a real problem.
In that sense, it's really. I think we are not modeling. It's not a model that we are like. It's not a closed model that we say, "Oh, these are the data," and then if you enter this and this is the outside, But it really comes close. Like in our games, we bring the real data, like the local data, GIS data, visualized and visualized in such a way that also non-architects or non-designers can understand and hold that information in their hands, and then based on that, build scenarios. But then really analog scenarios on like what could be happen, and I think maybe you can call it an interactive method, or instead of if you don't want to say, well, instead of calling it a game, it's an interactive method.
Why do we need this now? Do you think? What you said it changed, and why is that? I mean, because we are fed up with centralized solutions, or because we need a different. So why do we? I think
when we were talking in the beginning, we said that. I think I can talk from my own profession. I think from urban planning, as I said, I think two things changed. One thing is that it's not possible anymore for an architect to make a plan by himself, like in Le Corbusier in the last century. It's the questions are much more complex, and then you need to take that complexity, and I think one way of taking that complexity in is like bringing the people themselves. So instead of making the thing yourself complex, take the complexity of the players or actors or agents together into the system. And the other thing is that I think we have to do this together instead of the centralized top-down solutions, because we, like people who make the plans centrally for us are they have access to. They used to have much more access to knowledge than the citizens used to have. And citizens have much more. They also have access to knowledge, or they can also be part of the solution, or they can take responsibility, and they can say also sensible things. Sometimes more sensible than those who are making the plans for them. So that's why I think we need to take these. I think much more in the participation processes and their questions within themselves.
But I'm not in the 10 minutes now.
Okay, yeah. But I think, one thing I think the methods like ours do is you can. Take the information, visualize it, and bring. Like you can take people much more serious than any other participation method can take.
Yeah, I think it was you who said that your application. What is it? It brings the digital and the real together, and that's also something where you can model analog things in an analog way, but still use digital media. That information comes from many sources. I mean, that's true. It's not only through the role play or the play, but also to the engineering possibilities of to connect data into the game, which has never been possible until now. So I think those are two strong arguments. But my question would be, what do you think that what will happen with play? I know what will happen with architecture. You think you will find this enriched, but what will happen with play? So what do you think? What happens with play under this things that you just?
I think I understand the position that you're taking. That I mean, I can imagine that you don't want to see play being devised for a goal that has been set from another profession, right? This is, but basically your point is, and from our perspective, let's say, I think that we can. I mean, we see how play is important in interacting and learning from each other. You know, it is a value which we as planners never used before. It enriches our profession if we use it in the right way.
Yeah.
So I can tell from my perspective.
And not only your profession, right? It's everybody on the table, because we use a lot of these tools in urban dense areas.
It works.
And also,
it does work. I mean, for us, really, I think the interaction part, that, you know, the way a lot of us are being educated as architects and urban planners, how, you know, we don't understand different roles, how we have to value the value of learning from each other and building together collaboratively. These are all the values that play does bring in.
I agree. I'm just playing advocate's devil. You know,
Well, I think that's it for the introductions.
Yeah.
I think you raised a lot of questions for the people in here. I saw already one or three,
definitely.
5. But again, for this sort of Q&A, I do have rules to give everybody room to ask questions and to respond. I feel you really want to start. If there's someone else who wants to start, just raise your hand. I come to you. I have a mic, so if you have the mic, you can talk. Isn't this exciting? That's sort of weird. Oh, wait.
We need to get into the
He was raising his hands.
Oh my gosh, very touchy, sweaty. Yeah. Well, my name is Roland. I'm an urban planner, decision model.
That's me. Wait.
And now I'm going to talk because it's being recorded. I can't say anything.
It's a wireless system, but it was still connected to me.
Not that wireless.
So your name is wireless.
Yeah, is it working?
I used one test X1.
Yeah, I think it worked. That's fine.
Then I don't want to talk. Okay. I want to respond to the last question, on the question you were asking. In my view, observations, gaming becomes important first if the problem is very complex and there's a lot of power relations. So if you have an urban planning like Leidse-Rijn, an urban planner can just plan it, it's not a problem. The land is owned by the municipality or by a property, and then it can be developed. However, if you look at urban refuviation, for instance here, of gentrification, things have to be changed. We have flooding, we have heat stress. There's a lot of people who are involved in the decision making. And then gaming becomes an important thing because there's an emergence of the system, what is going to happen. So it depends heavily on the problem and the number of stakeholders involved who really determine it.
So what's your question?
Now is the question, because what you were saying, a lot of experience in participation. My question is, do you have the feeling that in the Netherlands, if we're talking about we're getting the omgevingswet in a couple of years, participation becomes an important issue. Mm-hmm. Do you think that urban planners, municipality, councilholders, etc., really like to do this kind of planning things, or is there an?
Yeah, I think.
Good question.
Yeah, I think that's. Yeah, I have it.
Yeah, but I like to do that.
I'll do that. Yeah, I think that maybe. I mean, we when we started with the Play the City and the first time the methods applications, I was really believing, okay, we have a method. Why? I mean, and it is an innovative method, so we can use it. And then when you start bumping into different barriers, you start understanding, like you try to understand how the whole machine of municipality or decision making works, which is another thing that architects and planners don't know when they are graduated, and they have to really understand the whole really complex machine of how these decisions are made. And then finally we did last year just research on participation processes that are being run in Amsterdam, and comparing that to Istanbul, which is a new mayor now, and you know, he has, as an opposition mayor to Ankara, he really needs participation, because he has to explain when things fail, why they fail, and he has to take people with him. He really needs participation versus the participation processes we have in Amsterdam, etc. And the biggest conclusion of that research, we are writing an article on that now, is that the culture of an organization where you can have GroenLinks or whatever, which political party which wants to come, which kind of agenda of democratization, whatever. I think that's one layer, and then there is underneath is a really thick layer of people who actually get things done on Ambtenaren or like all these other devices. That culture has to change.
Yeah,
I think.
I agree.
And if to my experience, I have also the best experiences, I must say, in Amsterdam. People, if you bump into a team who really believes in taking the bottom up influences or input to really into official planning, official decision making, they can do it. But they have to believe it. They are the ones who are getting things done. And I have bumped into. I think we are hearing also a lot of other participate, like what they call like a schijnparticipatie or something like the municipality. Exactly, the municipality made already their choices. In the meantime, they talk to people because the politician asked them to do it. In the meantime, they're doing expert other things. So there's so many of it. It exists at the same time. I cannot also. It's the.
Can I react on it?
Yeah.
I think it's very right what she's saying. So yes, they might be ready for it, but that's not the only reason. They must be ready for it. That's maybe another thing, because I think people are just fed up with centralized solutions that doesn't work. I mean, the banking crisis, what happens in ecology, some people want to have change now and they want to organize it themselves. So they start growing their own food. They start taking care, they want to grow gardens, etc., etc. So this is something which is a bottom up, and from there on you have to have a vision, and that's maybe the other thing. I went to a lecture of Fukuyama, and there identity in this society becomes more and more important. So the centralized coherence of groups has completely is lost. There's no church, there's no state there. Maybe in some case, but I mean they don't provide the right identity structures for people. So people are and they are lost in a way. So they need to find a common goal or a common understanding or meaning. And play is one of the things to do that. To just discuss and open up to communicate.
But play will never be enough. I think either I think you have to couple game with the right decision-making mechanism. Either it could be burgerberaad, it could be a politician who is really willing and really take the outcomes of the game seriously with the right group of technocrats that are working with him. I think the play is one of the methods that work. I have seen it working. I have seen it failing, and the failing part is really related how much the politicians, technocrats are ready to share their power of decision making with the outcomes of the game that the game delivers. It's a power game in the end, and I think the game as a method does not have that. It's a method that works, that can bring knowledge of different people together, that can combine things. But if you want to have a real impact, you have to have all the other things. So you either work with activists or work with processes like burgerberaad that will be part of the decision making, or the right politician or whatever. But I think that's also we learned a lot. I before I understand how decision making works, I don't make a game anymore if someone comes and if I don't know where the game outcomes will be, because I think we have seen so much.
Let's give it back to the floor. No, we're moving on to the next question. So thanks for this. This is a good discussion. I think this is also good to take on later on with the beer and enjoyment. So go ahead.
Yeah. So.
Introduce yourself.
Oh yeah, I'm Abe. I don't know.
Say it again.
I'm Abe. I make video games, but I have a scientific background. So my question is about the tension between reality and play. I sort of imagine you can start from a simple game, and you can build up and add realism to it, or you can take reality, you can simplify it. And if you take reality, you simplify it, you get like model UN. And if you take a game, you enrich it, you get some sort of city building simulator. If you're too far towards the abstract, it means that whatever you do in this process it doesn't reflect what you're gonna need in the long run. But if you're too far towards reality, it means that the stakeholders realize what's at stake, and you get all the problems of the real process in your game. And I'm curious, like, how do you resolve this tension? Where do you want to be? How do you do the trade-offs? Do you change the skill?
I think you're putting it in the right way. I think what my practice stands, it's more like, hey, we don't, for example, we have done also games where we do role play. For example, you come and you play the role of the mayor, and then someone plays the owner of squatter house, and they, and that helps people to understand each other's positions, but they don't help them to make a choice or a decision, right? So you just look. I think also there are games for training, there are games for different purposes, and in that sense, the purpose that where we originally come from, which is can we have methods that help us in a collaborative way make choices and decisions? I think that comes to the second category that you were defining, and then with that you get all the questions of like, then you start understanding how the power play works, what the participation does, which sort of activist the streams that you can work with, etc. Then you start going. Then you start try to understand how that works and how you can position your game within that. And I must admit, I realize we have been sometimes abused as a game. That you just being used as a game. People are happy. They come, they participate, they talk, but then actually the outcomes are not taken seriously. And we should not do that. I think we should really stop doing that. And I think, like the whole the participation stacking. I think in Amsterdam, what we have seen in Kabert, for example, that people do not trust. It's the processes that are brought to them, so they create their own processes, etc. Then you see also how people react and where does that go. And I think that's also a very interesting direction it goes. And in that position as well, game has a role. Like the Kabert citizens who didn't want to go along with the participation processes of the municipality, they still can use a game, but then it's their game. The municipality joins the game as a participant, not the owner of the game who invites the rest of the people into the game.
So I think it really depends on the goal of the game and the abstract. I like the abstract ones that you have, Netherlands, what we do with the Netherlands in 100 years when we're subsided, the sea level rise, for example, that's very abstract. But if you go into the district, like Amsterdam, and now we named some stakeholders, but if you look at Amsterdam, a water authority, it's 7 water authorities in Amsterdam to make a game. Within the municipality, it's green people, it's grey people, like the roads, we have water, so there are a lot of stakeholders within one as well, so it makes it incredibly complex. And I like the games with Watergraafsmeer, for example, the lowest part of Amsterdam. When we did a game there, it got really real. And you got real commands by people that live there, and that's amazing. That's almost not a game anymore, but you get amazing output, and that's really used to make Watergraafsmeer climate adaptive, for example. So,
Go ahead. Introduce yourself if you like.
Sure. Okay, so my name's Carla. I'm from South Africa. And I've actually reached out to you recently. So I'm more interested in the participatory planning from the urban planning perspective. I'm an urban designer and I work in informal settlements. So a lot of work around participatory or getting actors involved in delivering. And I suppose what I'm really interested in is understanding a couple of things that you've touched on, but do you find, I don't know in the Netherlands if it's similar in the South African context, but we are doing co-design processes and we're definitely not as advanced as what you're doing here, but it's almost like we are able to get municipalities to get involved, but they're very uncomfortable with committing to the outcome of what that actual urban plan is. So because there has been participatory process in that, it's almost like we run parallel processes and we create these beautiful documents that are then called public investment frameworks or whatever they may be, that are unbelievably collaborative. But they'll end up sitting on a table with an incredible vision.
I think in your legislation you have to do, like in your legislation you really have to do it, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we have worked in Kajalica.
Oh, okay, that's an area of focus.
And that was an interesting example in the sense that I think we were called in there to Kajalica to just make a little pilot for Kajalica because the municipality tested everything that is there and it doesn't work, and then they said, well, we can also test the game, why not?
Yeah.
That's how we were hired. Yeah. And then that game delivered a very beautiful, I mean, it was not I think some sort of a OMA, like the very funky office made a center plan for Kajalica. It was not working because it was done, let's say, by planning department who was there, 99% black community, and there was no communication. There's just one plan that's ending up there. And then the plan we delivered was much more, let's say, moderate. But like if you had a boutique hotel, you would know who is behind the boutique, who is the entrepreneur behind the boutique hotel, who wants to invest in it and for what reason. And then if there were the local traders, like basically the invaders of the land, but they are the ones who are there much earlier than anyone else, and they are the one, actually, if they are not there, it's not secure there anymore, so they know their position, so they can really defend, and they can find some of the informal traders found their new positions in the new plan when they could, for example, negotiate with the landowner who was going to make a new shopping mall, etc. So and the game has been hired by the land managers, which is the local group. Amazing, who is who then invited the municipality to the game to make it another plan on the other side of the train station. Yeah. So instead of staying there for half a year, we stayed there for 2 years, and we made 2 plans based on the game that we And I think I think your question was how does it work? I think if you realize what the game's questions are and who are the stakeholders and doing what, it did work. I mean, it really. I can give you the document.
Yeah.
I have another question for you three. Here's Joost.
Hi, I'm Joost, working also in water and climate sector. My question is for Floris. You're quite famous in the sector for putting cities underwater and doing a lot of small floodings, but doing a lot of experiments outside and preferably in neighborhoods. And I was also digesting a little bit about the difference between game and play. And I would say these experiments are also kind of playing. Yeah. And I think in water and climate adaptation, raising awareness and let citizens understand their potential problems, especially maybe in the Netherlands where not so much is happening relatively to other countries. If you hear this, maybe it's the question answer is always and, but dare to try to find an answer. Should you focus more on games or more on these experiments and playful interactions? So how do you find the connection with the citizens?
Exactly, of course the answer is it depends, and probably you have to do both. But what I like, especially if it's not the abstract level but really on district level, which I do the flooding, so that's for example we really go to bioswales or permal pavement and we flood the whole street. The thing is, of course, it gives a lot of knowledge on how they perform, but the greatest part is that people come out. And they don't come out if you do a little test or don't do a test. They come out and immediately say, are you from the municipality? And I'm not, so that's fun. And I can have a conversation with them and, without any prejudice. So, and the great thing is, basically, people don't know that it's a climate adaptive road. They don't know if it's a rain garden, or actually they don't process why it's important. So when you see that you flood a whole street, a lot of people come out and we raise awareness and capacity building and tick the boxes. So there's a lot of participation involved. And it's a topic on the neighborhood barbecues or anything. Because when you send a newsletter, nobody reads it. If you have a bewonersavond, it's not a sexy word. Nobody goes. But if you flood something, that's what in my. I'm not suggesting that we go out and flood everything, but it's a great way of participation, and that really helps. You have the most funny conversations, and of course we put it on social media as well, and people, they retweet, they like it. So I think the impact of a real life situation could be more than a game in that, and it could be seen as a game as well.
Can I add something to that?
Sure.
I think that's it's thinking by doing, basically, what you're saying, you know, and that's the best thing. And I think what we see now is that technology helps with that. If you think about Pokemon Go or Ingress, you know, you put an overlay over the real world. So in the future, you don't even have to really flood the street, but you could just
have the goggles.
And so we should also understand where we're heading to from a technology point of view. It allows us to play a new layer of fantasy over a real world, and then you have to choose, also in your question, how real that world is or what resolution that world should be, in order to the freedom that we need to take. If you really want to solve a tight problem, I think you have to go deep. If you really want a more emotional or, let's say, societal or abstract problem, you have to go wide. But I think the sky's the limit now with the new technologies that allow for this extra overlay over the real world. I think, but basically it's thinking by doing.
Yeah, that reminds me of, we were talking about Jane McGonigal. I think it was 2010 when she was playing World Without Oil. So there were people who were making all these like scenarios of like, oh, I woke up this morning and I couldn't drive my car, so I couldn't get milk, and there was no milk in the train, like a petrol station. Or like, people were like making these films about what if one morning you wake up and then there's no oil, like it's all gone, what your life would be like. And then they would then like make these stories and upload them in YouTube. At that time, YouTube was just, you know, like people were the place that they were sharing their stories. I think in that sense what you're doing gives also the dimension of like, hey, how do you process the information so real as possible, as if you're in that scenario, and what does it do to you then?
It gets real
in a tangible way. And I mean, and that's something also with immersiveness. We did spoke about VR, etc., where you really dive into this, where you really stand in the shoes of in an immersive world, which also can have its counter effects, where maybe dream becomes too far away from reality and things might happen. But so it's a balance in these.
Absolutely. And I think one thing to that question, not everybody plays games. There are a lot of elderly people that sit at home when I do the test and they come out, so you have to do both probably to reach everyone. And I think one of the things, when we're gone with exactly. And when we're gone or when you play the game, you need, people tend to forget as well. With heat stress, it's very short in a year. Drought, it's really a slight more than hour, as we call it. So you have to keep attention. And I think you need different methods as games or real-time floodings or
one small addition to that. I mean, let's talk about Wijkwater battle for a while. Leeuwarden it is, where maybe you know the game where the infrastructure of water in the houses are connected to a game, and then monsters. And if you use too much water, then the monsters drown. Here, reality really comes in. But what's more important, that they play this game for a long time. So it's intertwined with reality. It's not something here at a certain time and place for a couple of hours. No, it's intertwined with reality, and I think that's a very interesting way of doing, because there you see immediately results, but also you have the time to discuss this with your parents or with others, etc. So it becomes something which becomes a part of real life again. And play has never had this position, maybe in history, to become that. I think that's very interesting.
Yeah. It's all about starting a dialogue.
Yeah, it's all about starting a dialogue.
Yeah. Oh, let's bring the dialogue to you.
Yeah, very small question again. I was wondering, no.
Sure.
I've been applying and promoting games in the city of Utrecht, and it didn't work. And I thought, but that's the question, that the word game or play doesn't appeal at all at people at power. Then I used the book of Guido Stumpf about design thinking, and then suddenly they acted, because designing means something, a solution. And then I applied gaming in it, but I didn't use the word anymore. But maybe I'm completely wrong. Is it a good word, playing or gaming, in a real world?
They use the civic media. So actually it's not, and that also goes a little bit in what we have been saying. Are they separated from life anymore, or are they just so all over the place that you can't take them apart anymore? And so a game is something which you still think I'm playing at a certain time. Civic media is more than that. It's just, it uses play elements, and it could be WhatsApp, it could be all kinds of channels in which you use play as a scenario, but it's embedded in, and I think that's where we're heading to. So what you are doing is of course very.
Yeah, but I think in the context that you're saying that, I mean, there's a very ugly term, at least personally I find it ugly, a term invented called serious gaming. It's like gaming but then serious. just to convince the people like you are working with to relax them that it's okay, the games can actually, be as serious as design.
I actually use it as a design. The word I use the design to solve something.
But why? Let's ask a return question. Why do you have to? Why is it necessary that you?
Because the word game or play doesn't convince them in terms of collaborative.
And why are they afraid of? Because games and play have a negative connotation, or?
Yeah, they think it's a play.
Yeah.
So participation is sometimes used. You have to do it, but it takes a long time. Because the Delft University of the Technology University of Delft, they showed that it is a rate from 1 to 10. That if you do collaborative gaming in the beginning, it doesn't cost that much money in the whole planning process. So if you do in the beginning very good, and make a cost-benefit analysis.
Can we get that paper?
What?
Yeah. Great. All right. So with that, I'd like to conclude today's Q&A and session.
No more questions?
No, but there are a lot of beers, and like you're still here, right? So you can say. I would like you all to ask you a final question in one sentence. What is play? What can play bring to climate adaptation and citizen empowerment? One sentence, and I'll start with you.
Me? Oh, okay. One sentence.
Oh my God.
I really hope it starts a dialogue with the different stakeholders. And just one point that I made before, the stakeholder is not a stakeholder. It's like the municipality, there's so many departments. It really is depending on who you talk to. Starting a dialogue.
Starting a dialogue. Hey.
Yeah, I think that, well, I should agree with that. But I think also to, especially gaming can be effective, especially in a complex and in a, in terms of the terminology, how, it's a difficult terminology even for experts themselves. Not only terminology, the knowledge itself is super new and changing. Even people who think they did the right thing last year, and then they are the discussion is super complex. The technical level is really high, and games can really play a role in making it more tangible and translate it into a normal language, I'd say.
You said starting the dialogue, and you said making the dialogue even better.
Yeah, I think that, to kind of
knowledge
transfer.
Maybe shift in power relations.
Wow.
So that's maybe, and be prepared to different power relations. But basically, I think we agree. But so we're talking about a dialogue that has a function actually. Yeah. And I think that the function of this dialogue is to be interested, to be engaged, to be empowered, so that you and also resilience. I mean, that's something we really need.
Yeah.
But it's
a change.
Yeah.
Well, with that, I think we can conclude the session. Thank you so much for being here, and can I get a round of applause for this amazing speaker?